Hi, this is Pete Andresen. I am with Andresen and Associates Incorporated. We're a fee-only investment service. I thought I'd reach out to my clients before Thanksgiving happens. Let me show you my house a little bit. Getting dark. As you know, it's getting dark these days. We're into, okay, there we go. We're into fall for sure. Got my Christmas elf. And for a hike with my brown best musket today. It's Saturday. And we got saber-toothed cats, helmets, all that. So obviously, I am a man who is obsessed with history. And that's what I want to talk about today. We are a nation where we live like kings, and I'm going to get into that. We live tremendously well. We live astonishingly well. And yet we don't feel it. And that's the big theme today. How does that look financially? Well, let's take a look. Now I'm going to share the screen here. Go here. And okay. So I really want to talk about the fact that we live better than kings and presidents in history before us. You just saw my house, so you see that history is a big deal to me, and I think we don't realize how good things got after, say, 1940. We live bombarded with a constant battering of media that wants to show that things are wrong. Of course, things are wrong, but there's a lot going right. So that's me, Pete Andresen. I'm supposed to do this, I guess. It's information from my treasured clients. I'm not your investment advisor if you aren't my client. And nobody has a crystal ball. I'm going to get into the fact that I think there's a big, hard time out there. And like a broken clock that's right twice a day, and like a farmer who says it's going to rain someday, eventually we'll have hard times. I think they're going to come sooner rather than later. And we'll handle them. That's the other big thing. The idea of getting into doom is, not a healthy thing. And I think as we go into Thanksgiving, we want to consider that. And perfection is impossible. Wow, they just launched the stimulus plan. Shall we buy a bunch of stimulus stocks? If so, pick them. Hey, look, they look a lot like our value funds. Yeah. In other words, perfection is really hard to do. So I can't even pretend I can attain it. I just want to put this out here. We live in an age of miracles and wonders beyond words. If you could resurrect somebody from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, etc., they would look at our current era and they would be stunned at the quality of all our lives. And I include the poor people of the United States. Here's the world population living in extreme poverty. 1820, most people were, say, 85%, 90% of the world lived in extreme poverty, and were also living in some kind of slavery or serfdom. Slavery has been conflated into whoever wants to define something as slavery, but the fact is that extreme poverty involved a curtailment of liberty and human rights, some sort of peonage that we don't experience now. And now look at that graph. The number of people living in extreme poverty is like, 10%. 10% is too much. I agree, we still have work to do, but a lot has gone right. And dare I say it, a lot has gone right because of the United States of America and capitalism. Yes, 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 I will agree. There's a lot wrong with both of those systems, But more than that, there's a great deal right, and we're living in the benefits of that. But we don't know it. We perceive that we have stolen elections. We perceive that the COVID vaccine has chips in it. We perceive that life is full of hardship. Every single person you're seeing in this picture is well nourished and does not have tapeworms, I'm betting, or schistosomiasis, I'm betting, or chronic tuberculosis, or pick a disease that 150 years ago would have infected 80% of these people. They're all well fed, nobody's in poverty here, and they're reacting to something that they heard in the media. And that defines the American condition right now. We are being manipulated into hysteria and despair. And you're saying, hey, Pete, you're an investment advisor. Why are you talking about this? Because it matters in terms of how we allocate our portfolios. If you look at consumer sentiment, it's lower than it's been essentially since 2011, 2012, as we coped with the aftermath of 2008, which was a giant financial meltdown, where the stock market fell 50%. So we are still coming out of COVID. There was no way we were going to know what to do with that. There's no way anyone had a crystal ball and could predict with perfection how COVID was going to work its way through our society. We still can't do it. And yet somehow we got the expectation that we can. And we live in an era of mind-boggling prosperity. Look at the stock market. Until, say, 1980, the stock market was just kind of putting around, and then boom. I mean, I'm 67 years old and I'm young enough to remember when the stock market kind of went sideways. It's mostly about income, mostly about dividends. Now it's booming. What caused that? Of course, you know the answer to that. Basically, two things. A, technology. B, debt. We swim in an ocean of debt. Nevertheless, the money's real. In many ways, the world has gotten much, much, much better. This is global child mortality from 1800. 40% of all kids died back then, before the age of 5, and now it's down to 3%, 2%, and that's including the worst sectors of the world. The world has gotten better. Yes, there are always potentially lethal challenges and threats. We'll talk about global warming later. We'll talk about China. But at least we're not Henry VIII. Henry VIII. I mean, they make dramas about him. You can look at the Tudors on HBO. I think it's HBO. Wonderful, glamorous King Henry VIII of England, lived 1491 to 1547, and he defecated his entire life either into a box or into a stream or a moat or something. No running water. He ate rotten food. Food poisoning was a constant problem. All those diseases and parasites we just mentioned, they had them back then. He was married 6 times and he murdered 2 of his wives and nothing happened. Just flat murdered them. Nothing happened. He had a permanent rotten leg that smelled so bad that people couldn't stand to be in the room with him. He had 11 recognized children, of which 7 died in infancy or before they were born. And the 3 that survived did not live long enough or did not have children of their own. We are much better off than Henry VIII. But wait, you say, we have inflation. We have inflation. We have to deal with inflation. And that's true. If you're buying Thanksgiving, like my family is right now, I am going to go in and I'm not doing turkey this year. I'm doing prime rib. I'm going to go in and get a prime rib, and it will literally kill my monthly budget for groceries. Kill it right dead. This is going to be the most expensive Thanksgiving ever. And yes, that's a problem. Now, I will also get a comment. You don't understand. Inflation is different. They're calculating it wrong. It's actually up 30%. Okay, it's up a bunch. Yes, the cost of living, that's inflation, is up a bunch. That's one of the reasons we feel dissatisfied. And yet we are eating. Here's the comparison of inflation to just the 1970s. You look at this, here's from the Federal Reserve. And again, I know, I'm going to get a call from someone that says, yo, no, they're calculating it wrong. It's wrong. The point is that whatever inflation was in the 1970s, whatever, pick a number, pick a calculation methodology, it was vastly worse, if you remember back then, than the inflation we're having now. We are having inflation. It's bad. It could be permanent, and it will affect the way we're investing, but it is not crushing us. We are not rolling down the street with wheelbarrows full of currency as they did in the Weimar Republic in 1923 in Germany. We are living in some of the best of times despite the inflation. And at least we aren't this guy. This is Louis XIV of France. He's still pooping in boxes. They were inventing plumbing in his palace of Versailles, but he's still in the world of outhouses, basically. And plumbing was essentially non-existent. Hot water, dream on. Bathing, dream on. Light and heat, as with Henry VIII, created only by fire of some kind. Lamps, lanterns, fireplaces. He had no Netflix. He had no internet. He had no ability to watch Versailles, the series about his own life. He had 11 kids that were acknowledged, and 9 of them died in childhood. Another challenge we've got is global warming, which is real. Climate change is real. Scientifically, it's real. Yep. Somebody's going to call me and say, oh, no, it's fake. The climate's changing. The causation, we can debate it, but the climate's changing. Fortunately, we've got Leo DiCaprio and Greta Thunberg on it. Seriously, the hard work is always done by the middle class. The middle class survives despite government's efforts to crush it. These virtue signaling celebrities are not the people who are going to solve this problem. It's going to be the hardworking people, hopefully my family, hopefully your family, real people doing real change, real work, are going to have to experience the genuine climate change that will happen most likely, unless it doesn't, in which case we're wrong, just like COVID. You can't really predict the future, but we'll face it. That's the point. Greta Thunberg gives off the vibe that we're just doomed and we're going to die. Tell me, what's the motivation in that to change anything? And at least we aren't this guy. This is Abraham Lincoln, 16th president of the United States. He was part of a war that per capita, in terms of percentage terms, ruined the United States more than any other conflict ever did. I think influenza in 1918 and the COVID epidemic are probably going to do more damage to us in terms of our population. But in terms of wars, this is the worst war in American history. And as a nation, we broke the chains of slavery for millions. And now we're being told that one group's racist and one group isn't. And yet many of us are the descendants of people who died fighting to free the slaves. So can't figure that one out. Abraham Lincoln suffered from Marfan syndrome and depression, and his wife was probably insane. He had 4 children, and only one survived to have children of his own. He did have some plumbing, but mostly it was still the land of outhouses, and it was mostly burn something to create heat and light. He was shot to death at the age of 56. How about that gun violence? We're going to face big challenges in the future as well. China is gearing up to attempt to buffalo us into a 1936 Germany-style surrender of Taiwan. I cannot predict if we will have the courage to prevail. And history will go in one direction or the other, depending on what we decide. But we'll get through it one way or the other. The stock market is overvalued. It's been overvalued for years. You can see here, it's been overvalued since about 2012, 2013. And yet the money is quite real. We've made real money. The stock market's really overvalued. Every time I say that, I'm closing the door, my family's running around back there. Every time I say that the market's overvalued, it has to correct. The Federal Reserve intervenes and something technologically happens. And there we are, right back with the market going up again. So predicting this market's demise has been a costly exercise for me. And I've been too cautious for years. However, at some point, just like that clock that's right twice a day, the overvaluation in the stock market is going to reflect itself in a downturn. Remember, we've talking about Vanguard and their 10-year expectations, and they're expecting a 2 to 4% US stock market performance, which is tremendously lower than what we've made in history. Hidden in here, if they expect this for the decade, is a downturn, because the stock market almost never just goose steps its way across 10 years of history at 3%, because that kind of low performance is accompanied by lower earnings, and that usually reflects in a down market. They expect US growth to actually be negative. And look at these bonds. They expect essentially nothing compared to inflation. So there's hard times ahead. And what do you think we're going to do? Of course, we're going to selectively buy. Big thing is it will be temporary and we'll get through it. I point out that predictions like this have often failed because the Federal Reserve is stimulated. It's a different world out there, and these predictions may not come to pass. But at least we aren't this guy. This is Franklin Roosevelt, 32nd President of the United States. My 101-year-old mother remembers him quite well. He was crippled by polio, which is now preventable to the point that it doesn't even exist in the United States. Preventable via, wait for it, vaccination. He lived and he led as Secretary of the Navy in World War I and then President World War II. We went through 2 world wars, which were probably demographically the most catastrophic events in world history in terms of millions killed. He lived through the 1918 influenza pandemic. He was president during a global crushing economic depression after the 1929 stock market crash. He died at age 63, used up, and yet he's a hero to us, and we make movies about his life. So yes, we will get through whatever is ahead of us. To review, we live in an age of miracles and wonders. We've never had it so good. We live better than kings and presidents and queens. Let us be mindful that hard times are always ahead. They're always out there. Look, I'm going to lose more hair, I predict. So hard times are always out there. Let us also have the courage to celebrate the moment. And that's what I want to leave you with right now, is that mindfully, as we go into the end of this year, We're conservative on our portfolio allocations. It's a great time to review things. Hard times are out there somewhere, but right now, let's savor the moment, savor where we're at, savor these vast bull markets that have made us all rich. Enjoy our heat, enjoy our flush toilets, enjoy our hot showers, and let's have the courage to face the future. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. Okay. Again, I'm wishing you a wonderful holiday season. Call me if you have any questions. Remember, if you turn on the news and it's bad, some of the best ways to deal with that include turning it off and finding something you can actually change. I'm as guilty as anyone. It's been a stressful time getting through COVID, so I'm wishing you all the best. Thank you very much.